The aroma of turkey wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pumpkin pie. But for me, Thanksgiving had never been a day of gratitude. It was a time of dread, a night when the past clawed its way into the present, a night where nightmares took on flesh. My family gathered in the spacious dining room, a long oak table adorned with a crisp white tablecloth, cutlery glinting under the chandelier's warm glow. Laughter echoed, but I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, an observer of a twisted play. "Pass the gravy, will you?" my brother Mark said, his voice dripping with false cheer. He was already 3 beers deep. I watched as he leaned back in his chair, the laughter of our relatives washing over him like a warm blanket. I could see his eyes glazing over, a mixture of drunkenness and disdain. "Sure, why not drown in your gluttony?" I muttered under my breath, but he didn't hear me. I was thankful for that, at least. "Come on, lighten up, Jess," my sister Chloe chimed in. Her laughter was forced, a thin veneer over her own discomfort. "It's Thanksgiving. We're supposed to be thankful." Thankful? For what? This family that had crumbled and shattered like broken glass? I glanced at my parents, entrenched in their own silent war, the unspoken words lingering in the air thicker than the gravy. They hadn't spoken to each other in months, and yet here they sat, pretending like everything was all right. "Mom, can you pass the stuffing?" I asked, trying to break the tension. She nodded absently, her gaze fixed on her plate. As the evening wore on, the laughter grew louder, drowning out the unease festering within me. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows lengthening, creeping toward us like a predator stalking its prey. My heart raced as I glanced outside the window, the night shrouded in darkness, the wind howling a mournful tune. "Jess, you all right?" Mark's voice cut through my thoughts. He looked at me with concern, or maybe it was just the booze clouding his judgment. "Yeah, just fine," I lied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask over my face. When I returned to the table, I found everyone staring at me, their laughter fading into silence. I felt the weight of their gazes, scrutinizing, judging. "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Chloe quipped, her laughter almost genuine, but I could see the fear lurking behind her eyes. "Maybe I have," I muttered, standing up abruptly. "I need some air." I stepped outside, the cold biting at my skin, the chill wrapping around me like a shroud. As I leaned against the porch railing, I closed my eyes, trying to block out the cacophony of laughter and feigned joy that echoed behind me. It was easy to forget the horrors that lay beneath the surface, but not tonight. Tonight, the memories clawed their way back, vivid and raw. "Jess!" a voice called out, breaking through my reverie. It was my father, the man who had once been my protector but had become a shadow of his former self. The alcohol had consumed him, leaving behind a husk of bitterness and regret. "What do you want?" I snapped, anger bubbling to the surface. "Just wanted to make sure you weren't planning to run away from your problems," he said, slurring his words. His breath stunk of whiskey and despair. "I'm not running away, I'm just what?" he interrupted, stepping closer. "Hiding? Just like your mother? You think you can escape it all? The family is a mess and you're too scared to face it." I clenched my fists, fury coursing through my veins. "You think I'm scared? You think I don't see it? The way you two pretend like everything is fine? It's disgusting." "You know nothing," he spat, his anger flaring like a match to kindling. "You don't understand what it's like to be trapped in this hell." "Trapped? You did this to us," I yelled, my voice rising above the wind. "You turned this family into a nightmare." In that moment, a shadow flickered at the edge of the porch, something dark and twisted lurking just out of sight. I turned my head, but it vanished, leaving only the howling wind and the oppressive weight of my father's gaze. "Jess, don't." He reached for me, but I stepped back, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. Inside, the laughter resumed, but it felt hollow now, like a broken record skipping over the same haunting notes. I returned to the dining room, where Mark and Chloe were now engaged in a heated debate about politics. Their voices rose and fell, a chaotic symphony of anger and confusion. "Can you believe this election?" Mark shouted, throwing his hands up in frustration. "It's all a joke." "Shut up, Mark," Chloe snapped. "You're just mad because your candidate is losing." Their bickering was a distraction, but it wasn't enough. I watched as my mother sat there, her eyes glossed over, staring at the remnants of the meal. The turkey carcass lay in the center of the table, a grotesque reminder of what had once been a feast. "Mom?" I asked softly, hoping to break through the fog surrounding her. "Are you all right?" She blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "I'm fine, dear." But the tremor in her voice told a different story. "Fine? You haven't said a word all night," I pressed, frustration boiling over. "Do you even care about us anymore?" "Of course I care," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. "But you don't understand what I'm dealing with." "Then tell me," I shouted, slamming my fist on the table, rattling the dishes. "Stop pretending everything is okay. It's not okay." "You think you know pain?" she shot back, her eyes blazing with fury. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family." "Sacrificed? You've sacrificed nothing but your sanity," I retorted, my heart racing. The room fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the clock, counting down the moments until something would break. I could feel the darkness creeping back in, a heavy weight settling over us, thick and suffocating. And then, I heard it. A low growl emanating from the shadows, a sound that sent chills racing down my spine. "What was that?" Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "It's probably just the wind," Mark said dismissively, but he didn't sound so sure. "Wind doesn't growl," I hissed, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Maybe it's just a dog outside," my mother suggested weakly, but her voice trembled with uncertainty. "Yeah, right," I muttered, glancing toward the darkened window. "Whatever it is, it's getting closer." Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat, and when they returned, the room felt different. Charged, electric. My heart raced as I looked around, the faces of my family illuminated by an ominous glow. They looked terrified, and for a moment I felt a flicker of fear myself. Then, without warning, the front door swung open, the wind howling like a banshee, and a figure stepped inside, cloaked in shadow. Who's there?" my father stammered, his bravado washed away by the darkness creeping into the room. The figure stepped forward, a twisted grin spreading across its face, revealing teeth that glistened like daggers. Well, what do we have here? A family reunion?" I felt my heart drop into my stomach. The figure was a stranger, yet somehow familiar, like a nightmare I couldn't shake. "Get out," I shouted, moving instinctively to shield my family. "Who are you?" "Just a fan of Thanksgiving," the figure replied, its voice dripping with malice. "But it seems your family is more rotten than I thought." "What do you want?" Chloe squeaked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to show you the truth," the figure said, its grin widening. "You see, this dinner isn't just for feasting, it's for reckoning." With a flick of its wrist, the lights dimmed again, and suddenly, images flickered on the walls, horrors from our past replaying like a twisted movie. "Stop it," I cried, covering my eyes, but I could still hear the screams, the echoes of our failures, our betrayals. "Look at what you've become," the figure taunted, its voice a low growl. "You're all monsters in your own right." Mark lunged at the figure, but it simply sidestepped, allowing him to crash into the table. Dishes shattered, the sound mingling with the chaos in our minds. "Enough!" my father roared, his voice breaking. "Get out! You don't belong here!" But the figure merely laughed, a chilling sound that seeped into the cracks of our sanity. "You think you can escape? You invited me in the moment you chose to ignore the truth." With a wave of its hand, the images morphed into something grotesque. Our family members, twisted and disfigured, their faces contorted in agony. I stumbled back, horror clawing at my throat. "This is what you've done. This is who you are," the figure screamed, its voice rising above the din. "No!" I yelled, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. But it was too late. The weight of our sins crashed down upon us, and the darkness enveloped the room, consuming everything in its path. I watched as my family members screamed, their bodies contorting, twisting into grotesque shapes, their faces morphing into masks of despair. And then, just like that, it was over. The figure stood alone in the center of the room, the chaos settling into an eerie silence. "Happy Thanksgiving," it said, its voice a whisper. I was left standing amidst the wreckage of my family, the remnants of laughter replaced by the stench of decay. The darkness closed in, and I realized there was no escaping the truth. We were all trapped, bound by the very horrors we had tried to ignore. As the last flicker of light faded, I heard the finality of a door slamming shut, sealing our fate. And in that moment I understood that the scariest night of my life wasn't the arrival of a stranger, but the realization that the true horror lay within, festering like a wound that would never heal.